Afternoon, everyone. How we doing? Good? Hey, thanks for sticking it out. It's 4:45 or whatever it is, and we're in Vegas, and I think we're the last presentation before you get a drink. So I feel really guilty, but thanks for sticking it out. We really appreciate you guys being here, and hopefully we're going to make it a really entertaining session. At least I'm going to give it a go to start off with, and then Andy will get up and he's going to show you all sorts of pretty pictures and code and all sorts of this fun stuff that's really technical, and I have no idea what I'm talking about when I do that stuff. And then lastly, we've got a customer to come up on stage just to prove that everything that we spoke about wasn't complete rubbish. It was actually true. So we've got a customer from Western Union who's going to come up and help validate the story of what we're talking about. And I know you guys haven't heard about AI at all today, or machine learning, right? You guys, this is completely foreign to you. So welcome to the 2020. I'm going to be doing the very first presentation on AI. Isn't that amazing? Not really. Thank you. Oh, I love it. Oh, and also, just so we can get it, two things out of the way really quickly. Yes, I'm from Australia. I don't want you to sit there wondering, is this guy from England or from New Zealand? So we just get that out of the way straight away. And no, I haven't been drinking yet. So the second piece I wanted to get out of the way is the quick infomercial of who Dynatrace is, and then I can move on to the fun part of the presentation, and I'll actually demo it, because I know you guys love sales pitches. So why am I talking about AI? Actually, hands up, I'm going to make this a little bit active. Who's familiar with Dynatrace? Show of hands. Okay, not too bad. The people that work at Dynatrace should not be putting their hands up, or probably should be, actually. Is anyone currently using Dynatrace? Yep, we got a few. Okay, no, not that many. All right, this is good. This is going to be fun. Okay, so really quick sales pitch. We're a leader in application monitoring or performance management. 4 or 5 years ago, we decided to completely change everything, and we developed a brand new platform. And with that new platform, we put an AI engine at the core of it, which obviously everyone's marketing and saying they're doing exactly the same thing. But I want to take you through why ours is a little bit different, and Andy's going to show you how it works. And it's more than just applications as well. So it's the full stack of digital experience through the application layer, services, down to the host network, data center, and the whole lot. Built for these big, large, web-scale environments, which we're all running today. And we call it software intelligence, to confuse everyone so no one knows what on earth it is that we're talking about. Not really. Okay, so let's get started. AI, right? So the AI is here. And as someone who markets AI, I start thinking about the fact that there's probably 3 schools of thought when I position AI to all of you. And the first school of thought would go, I've been working in IT now for about 15 years, and everyone keeps talking about AI, and this guy is full of crap, and there is no way that AI is going to help me deliver anything for cloud operations, and I'm not going to automate myself out of my job, right? That's the first school of thought. The second school of thought are those people that are going, interesting, I can actually alleviate myself from doing all these manual tasks, and I can start doing some more interesting things with my time. Sounds pretty interesting. I'm going to buy into that second school of thought. And there's one more school of thought, and that's the third school of thought, and they're the people that haven't heard a word that I said because I put the AI thing up on the page, and you guys started freaking out, and your voices are going off in your head going, oh my God, the AI's coming to take my job, and we're going to get crushed like ants. And no one really laughed because you laughed at my voice when I did that. So what do? Do we fear or do we embrace AI? We have to fear. Embrace. We've got to embrace, right? Because we all have to change. Because if we don't change, someone else will change. And someone else will be smarter as a result of using the AI, and they'll be able to do more interesting things with their time, and you'll be stuck. So we really have no choice but to try and embrace the artificial intelligence and change. And I say this to our Dynatrace people, particularly people that were using our old product. And I said, you've got to embrace the change. You've got to move. You've got to go to the new AI. And they're like, you know, and I was talking with one of my customers, and he said, you know, I've been working in IT now for 15 years, and there is no way I believe the AI could do what it said it could do. And it kept happening. So then I surveyed some of our customers, and I got some really interesting results, and I wanted to share them with you. And for those people that are engineers, and it's not statistically correct, that it's blah, 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 I'm going to ad-lib a little bit. That's marketing. That's sort of what we do. But this is a genuine survey that we did. Basically, were you skeptical about an AI engine's ability to transform or help improve cloud operations? The first school of thought, right? The first school of thought that we said was like, yeah, right, not going to happen, right? That's the largest group. Now, the whole reason for like application performance monitoring, management, software intelligence, full stack, whatever you want to call it, is, and basically we say, we call our AI engine Davis, by the way, just in case you're confused. I'm like, who on earth is Davis? I'll get that part out of the way. But part of the reason why we do this is because we need to be able to identify the precise root cause of issues when they occur really, really quickly. And so then I ask the customers the same thing again. Do you believe the answers that Davis gives you? And the vast majority said no. 62% said not really, and 8% said definitely not, or yes, there was 29%. And they were probably already using it. Because, of course, what was the third one? Once they actually tried the AI, they then recognized that actually, yeah, I do trust the answers, and it is helping me with my job. So that was a little test that I did to prove out the skepticism of the IT world and how much fun my job is marketing to people that are already brainwashed by AI and don't believe a single word that we're talking about in marketing, which is quite right to believe that. So if we recap, we're skeptical of AI. We, particularly around sort of IT cloud operations, we don't believe it's possible to find the precise root cause. And this really recap is for that third school of thought, those people that are still screaming in their head about the fact that we're all going to get crushed by the AI. And then those that tried it didn't trust the answers. And then we came back to the other solution or the other scenario, which is you really have no choice. Like we actually have to do this because it's not just our reluctance or because we love it, it's because the environments today are so complex, they're so large, it's now impossible for humans to be able to determine what is going on within these environments in any manual process. You really do and should be using the machine or the intelligence in order to generate the answers so you guys can focus on being more valuable in your business. And the other thing that's really interesting, just when you thought your jobs weren't getting harder, just when you thought multi-cloud, microservices, web scale, and then you need to focus on digital experience, the people turn around and basically go, look, software rules the world, everything's going to be software, everyone's going to get disrupted, and you guys are at the core of all of it. So transformation is really hard, but it's necessary. Every single business in every single industry is digitally transforming. So I always come back to this scenario to provide some empathy to you people to understand that it's like IT and the DevOps teams and everyone who is coding is now not only one of the most important groups within any business because you're the center of every digital transformation, but you've also got ridiculously one of the hardest jobs in the world that most people outside of your world also have no idea what on earth is going on. So it's very difficult for them to understand. They just go do it. And it's like, it's not as simple as that. So you really do need to leverage the ability of having an AI so you can help do and get more time back to do the things that really matter and help speed up some of the manual processes that we do. Because software rules the world. And no matter what industry you're in, everything is defined by software. And today, like an end user can switch companies from just lying in bed. Like I have this conversation with a girl at work and she said, I use Lyft over Uber because it's just like within a millimeter better at pinpointing exactly where I am. I'm like, a millimeter? You've got to be kidding me. I'm from the generation that had to catch a taxi, and I'm actually originally from Perth in Western Australia, and there's only bloody one taxi in Perth. It's very difficult to get one. And then you have this generation complaining about millimeters. So it's unbelievably hard. And in order to show you an example of like how great software is and how perfectly it works, I'm going to use just a very different example. I'm going to go through it relatively quickly, but for those that didn't know, this is a really interesting thing that happened on this one day on July 8, 2015. United Airlines had to ground every single one of its planes because of an issue. And that's not uncommon. It happens to a lot of airlines these days where they have some form of issue that causes flight delays. Now, at the same time, the New York Stock Exchange had an outage and they had to delay the start of trading, which obviously costs a damn lot of money. And if you wanted to read about it, you could go to the Wall Street Journal, except the Wall Street Journal was down as well. And what's not funny is that a 911 call center was down, and that cost lives. And I know it's kind of late now, and everyone's feeling really morbid after I just said that. So this was 2015. Actually, a side story on this. Last time I presented this at our event, and United wasn't a customer of ours at the time, and the sales team had brought United to the event, and here I am standing there presenting about United's outage, which went down really well when I got off the stage. But anyway, they're going to be a good customer now. So that was 2015. Actually, what happened on that New York Stock Exchange? What happened when the market went down in New York? The Chinese woke up and they went, oh my God, the markets are down. Their market went down. Then the Europeans woke up and went, market's down. And the whole world, all the markets went down. And you know what they even did? They rolled out like the FBI or something because they thought it was some kind of conspiracy theory that all of these things happened on this one day in time. True story, you can look it up. It's very interesting, but I won't dwell on it for too long. Now, actually, the only other part to that is in the commentary, in the article in the Wall Street Journal, I found this article afterwards, it said there was another paper that was publishing it, and they said what was published in the Wall Street Journal not long after their own site went down was that it didn't actually matter that the New York Stock Exchange was down, as in that the software wasn't working. And I was like, what? What do you mean it doesn't really matter? They can't trade if it's not available. And so anyway, interesting fact, you can look that one up. Now, oops, went past that one too fast. So, lucky I didn't reveal the big stat. You're not alone. 76% of CIOs in our recent research found that managing the complexity is nearly impossible. And the whole reason why we're doing this software and releasing better software faster is to deliver better experiences and bring new services to market faster, and yet we're struggling to do that as well. And we're feeling like the complexity is impacting the user experience at the same time. And to demonstrate, I asked some of our customers, so in terms of the dependency size, what our AI does is it'll analyze the entire full stack, all the services, the processes, the hosts, the whole lot. We call them a dependency. And I asked the customers, I said, who has the largest number of dependencies per problem analyzed? And we came back with this particular example from a customer in South Africa, happens to be a bank. And it is 209,492,640, damn, I knew I was going to do this. 209,492,640,819,000 dependencies to get to the root cause. Doesn't sound like fun trying to analyze all of that, does it? No, of course, you're not going to. Not even with a team of people. So that's why this is now, our environments are now beyond human capability. And so you get the point now, we've got to embrace it. Because I rarely hear people say things like this. I love war rooms. They're awesome fun. Or, I love guessing because knowing's so boring. We as humans love to have the answers. We have like one customer, Kroger, and he said, you know what, now that I have answers, I actually love going to work. I love my job because we're no longer arguing and fighting and trying to try and figure out like what's going wrong and finger pointing. Instead, he goes, I'm like Captain America, he called himself, I think. And he just says, because we're all about the truth. And what's that? I'm not American, so I just stuffed the joke up. And I feel really bad now, but anyway. Captain America says something. Does anyone know what he actually says? No, didn't think so. Okay. Well, the point was, having answers is really good. Not having answers is really bad and can be really dangerous, especially when you guess. Because I found this. This is what happens if you do too much correlation instead of causation. Nicolas Cage is very dangerous. He's a very, very dangerous man because at times that Nicolas Cage appears in a film, people drown. And that's a correlation. And that's why it's really important to get specific, precise answers, not guesses, and try and bundle it all together. And then more on an empathetic note, you guys are probably all suffering from email fatigue or email alert fatigue, right? We're getting thousands of emails. And you know it's 2020 next year. Actually, we're like not even next year, it's like next month. That time went fast, didn't it? But in 2020, we were only supposed to work 30 hours a week. 30 hours, we got like 28 days to pull it off. What do you reckon? Nah, we're doing like 80 hours. We've never worked so hard in all our lives. And we're drowning in alerts and emails and sitting in war rooms. And we seriously cannot keep going like this, can we? We've got to find some work-life balance. We've got to start enjoying what we do, like the Kroger example. And that's why I was sort of thinking about it more like this, and this is, I make it sound like it's revolutionary. I'm sure there's heaps of people that have said, and I know they have, assisted intelligence. It's not artificial, it's not coming to take our jobs, it's coming to make our jobs better. And one particular example was from this futurist, and I really liked the way he simplified it. He said, and heaven forbid if anyone has anyone that suffers from cancer, I apologize, but this is his story, and so it's not meant to be a representation of that. It's about helping yourself cure cancer. And he basically said, so if you are suffering from cancer, would you want an AI to cure your cancer, to solve your cancer, or do you want the best oncologist in the world? Or, the third option, do you want the best oncologist in the world with the best AI? Well, I'm taking 3, right? You're going to take your best bet with the best oncologist and the AI. That's what we need to do. That's exactly what we're talking about. And so the promise of AI, what is it all about? What is it helping us to do? Andi will come up and show some examples, and we'll also have Western Union come up. But it's all about reducing that alert noise, getting precise root cause answers to problems. It's potentially auto-remediating and fixing issues before they get into production. It's about releasing better software faster and giving people more access to this information so that they are able to solve problems, democratizing the data so everyone has access to the same intelligence so we can all go that little bit faster. And it also enables us then to focus on what really matters. If you go and ask every single CEO of every Fortune 500 company, they're going to come back to the one thing that makes a difference, and that's customer experience. Because every airline is flying almost the same plane to the same terminal, using pretty similar crews, offering exactly the same service, but what differentiates them is that customer experience, and most of that experience now is digital. So that's the opportunity for you guys to free yourself up from the manual troubleshooting to focus more on that experience. And a couple of really quick customer examples of who have done that. Like a customer like an ANZ Bank from New Zealand. They reduced the number of hours needed per release. They reduced their downtime from 32 to 0. They went from 6 weekly release cycles to 1 per week during humane times, which was a Friday at lunchtime. No longer at ridiculous times of the hours, and they had 0 incidents as a result. So it really is about spending less time troubleshooting so you can use your grey matter. And using your grey matter, I'm going to share one more example before Andi comes up. And this one was my favourite because today, I don't know how many steps, have you guys, who's counting their steps today? Show of hands. All right, we're counting steps. Has anyone done more than 15,000 steps today? Yeah?
Yesterday was 16,000.
Yesterday was
22,000
22,000.
steps. Jesus, I was going to say I've done 19,000, but that's not even that good. So, I don't know if they do this in the US, but in the UK, the health insurance providers will give you credits. They'll give you vouchers. You're nodding your head. Do you have this in the US?
Different providers.
Different providers? Okay. So how cool though, right? So if we're active, we're fit, we're healthy, we exercise, we do our steps, we get credit from our health insurance provider because we're probably less likely to require the insurance. So then they give things like movie tickets and Starbucks vouchers and all those sort of things, right? It sounds really, really cool. Sounds like someone designed it from a product marketing team or a product management team or a business team or whatever, and they said, all right, IT, come on, make it work. And it sounds really good on paper. So this is what they did. They basically I have a Garmin, so I'm really happy. I've done all my steps. I sync it up to my Vitality app, and then I can get like discounts on Apple Watches and Prime vouchers and all this sort of stuff. Which sounds perfectly awesome, bringing a new feature to market, except the thing didn't work. Like half the time the sync didn't work, right? And so they had failed transactions all the time. And then everyone kept calling the help desk. And who's more irate when you're like, damn, I really wanted my $20 voucher because I've done like 20,000 steps. It's really annoying, especially if you got up and you went for a run, then you'd be really annoyed. And so these people are really annoyed, right? And so what they did, the IT team, really smart, is they were able to use, and also this was costing them like significant amounts of money, not just call center hours of people having to fix it and whatever, but they actually had to compensate people for the lost points. So it was like in the hundreds of thousands of pounds, but don't tell them because they were going to share this story at another time. Anyway, so what they did is they were using Dynatrace to detect the failed transactions. So if there was a failed transaction in sync between the Apple or the Garmin or the Fitbit or whatever, they were able to automatically detect it. And then they exported that out into a AWS machine learning platform, matched it up, and they used some data scientists to figure this out, obviously. They matched it up with their CRM data. And then they looked at the profile and the preferences of the CRM data to say, does this customer want an SMS, an email, or a phone call? Is this customer a high-value customer? Is this customer nearly out of their premium? And then they would route the response accordingly. And it would be an automatic response where they would automatically get their designated voucher straight away without any humans getting involved, unless it went to a high-value customer or someone was nearly out of policy, and they would ring them. And they would proactively reach out to them to say, I think the transaction failed and we're going to send you your voucher. Which is cool, right? Because then the customer goes, they see me. I'm not just a number. I love these Vitality guys. These are great. So that's a really good example of a team that's shifted the way of like forgetting about all the manual troubleshooting and all that other junk they were doing staring at dashboards to now free themselves up to think, what can we do that's strategic that's going to make a difference to our business? So this particular service is smack bang on the front homepage of Vitality. This is how they're differentiating themselves. They're all about customer experience as a result. This is a perfect example of how they do that. And you can tell I love stories, and I'm nearly finished. But my last couple of stories are things that are really personal to me. And a couple of examples are, one is from Experian, where they were able to basically automate most of their enterprise cloud architecture to free people up. And you know what their CIO said at one of our conferences? He said, you know the third factor that we didn't account for? He said, our team are happy and they're more productive. I've never had a happier team, and we're retaining staff as a result. And the last one is my favorite. This one is from a company called Barbary, and he basically said, it helps my team sleep at night. But he actually went on to say one other thing. He goes, it gives me an extra hour in the morning to have breakfast with my kids. That's what it's all about, right? That's about reducing the number of hours that we're manually doing. And so to sum it up, before I get Andi to come up and wow you with all this code and data and put this all into practice. And I did say data, that's how we say it in Australia. Just so you know, it's data, right? You get what I'm saying? You're like, did he really just say data? Is that a thing? It is in Australia. Although when I first did this, the team in the UK were making fun of me so much, I did have to ring someone in Australia and say, we do say data, right? And they were like, yeah. So if you find an Australian, go up to them and go, data. Lastly, it's all about change. So we all have to evolve. We have to change. It's not about being the biggest company in the world. It's not about necessarily being the fastest company in the world. It's about the company and the teams that are the most adaptive to change and can accelerate and can learn and can take advantage of these new technologies. So thank you very much for listening to me today to debunk the myths of artificial intelligence. I hope you found it useful. I'm going to come back up later on to talk with a customer about how they're doing it. But please now welcome Andi Grabner, our DevOps evangelist, to show you how the product works.
All right. So thanks for the PowerPoint programming. We'll switch to real code. There we go. All right. So I spent about probably 15 minutes because obviously you like to talk and you took more time than we initially agreed on. That's the way it always works with the marketing people. And the technicians have to fix it, what they sell, right, and what they do. So my name is Andi Grabner, as I was introduced. I've been working with Dynatrace for the last 12 years actually now. It's been a phenomenal journey. Before that, I worked 8 years for a company where we did load and performance testing. So performance is dear to my heart, and I think also what we do here now with Dynatrace, our product, but also how we use it internally and with our customers is something that I'm very passionate about. So I wanted to show you 2 things. The first thing and don't leave the room. It's not that bad. Come on. As people leave in the room, that's what it is. Maybe they bring their friends back. Who knows? So there's 2 things I want to show you. First of all, I want to demystify the AI. Because as Dave said, this is not just something mystical thing that happens. I explained to you what we do with the data, how we get the data, and what the AI is actually doing. The second use case, I want to show you how you can use it, not just to help in operations, but actually to build self-service for your engineering teams, for your business folks, by integrating it in your delivery pipelines in order to allow them to push better code faster to production. Also show you how you can do self-healing and things like that. Now, I'm pretty sure this is pretty small for you, so don't worry, I will zoom in. So what I have here is, Dave, I think you showed a problem earlier on your screen with from customers where Davis detected something. How big was your number? 220 trillion, okay. I think my number is a little smaller, but size doesn't always matter in life. Sometimes it does. In this case, well, I think I can still get the point across. What you see here is Dynatrace monitoring my system and actually detected from an operational perspective a problem, and it analyzed on the top right that there is an issue, and it analyzed 534 million dependencies. Still a big number, and a number that I don't want to have to analyze manually. What it really tells me is, hey, in my system that is running actually across cloud, so we're actually monitoring an application that runs hybrid cloud. In this case, most of it on Amazon, the application I'm monitoring, but some also on-premise and some in a competitor's cloud environment that I'm not telling because I'm actually obviously recorded here. Most of it runs on AWS. The nice thing about the AI is it tells me what is the business impact of that problem. To come back to your vitality story, it tells me there are 761 people impacted by it. So the first thing I can do, Dynatrace can send a notification to the business people via Slack. It can send out a tweet saying, hey, we have a problem right now. But not only that, what I can also do, Dynatrace also automatically does real user monitoring. So I see all these real end users. From the vitality story we heard earlier, that they are actually using this raw data. I can see that these are the users that are being impacted. I can do additional filtering. I want to show you something really cool. I want to filter on those people that are maybe a little close. So I'm from Austria, in case you wonder where my accent comes from. I want to pick somebody, let's say from Germany. The Austrians don't always like the Germans, but in this case, I'm picking somebody that is close. Is somebody here from Germany? Oh, I'm so happy, I'm glad. Dynatrace actually tells me there was Heiner Hastings on our application while Dynatrace detected there is an issue. This person actually was very active. This person had 3 sessions open where he tried different things. I can see, if I click on that session, what type of browser he used. I can see things like what are the bookings, what is the value that this user currently has in the shopping cart, because we're monitoring a shopping application. What's also really interesting is we have a feature that's called session replay. So not only do we capture information about the user, where they're from, what they're doing, but we also capture, and I'm now going in full screen mode here, and I'm raising my hands. You can see the mouse move along. So we're actually replaying what Heiner Hastings from Germany experienced, how they navigated through the website while we had a problem, while we had a slowdown. This is pretty cool, first of all, for root cause analysis, for figuring out where the people struggle in the event of a problem. It's also really awesome if you guys are moving towards canary deployments, towards blue-green deployments. I guess this is a question in the back. Can we keep the questions to the end? We have some dedicated time. Unless I can answer really fast, but I think.
I'm just wondering how how it's monitoring all that. Is it doing it at the application level, or is it doing it at those levels?
I'll show you in 2 minutes, because that was part of my demo. So what you could see here, though, we kind of experienced and saw what Heiner actually did. A lot of our customers are now, as I said earlier, using this for A/B testing to see how are people actually also behaving differently. But this data is all available for every single user that is actually on the site while a problem happens, or while you're doing some A/B testing. So let's go back to my problem from earlier that I had open. Remember this year, so that 400 or 500 million. So I know the business impact, which means I can actually trigger a Lambda function. I can execute an Ansible Tower script. I can start a ServiceNow workflow with different integrations. I can call any type of webhook that is then notifying the right people about this problem, or even sending out automated messages, as I said earlier, through Slack, through updating your Facebook status that you're terribly sorry about this. What's also interesting is Dynatrace tells me the root cause. This is now, I want you to focus on the right side. Dynatrace is analyzing all of my dependencies, and it's basically, this is how our AI works. It walks through the dependency tree and looks at all the different anomalies, all the metrics, all the log files, all the exceptions, all the SQL statements, every single line of code of the whole system that is supporting this app that is currently having a problem. And then it tells me what is the real root cause. So I don't need to look at different tools and hunt down different kind of tracks for my root cause analysis. I just say, the problem seems to be my check destination service. And guess what? Dynatrace actually tells me this check destination service currently runs across 4 different Apache Tomcats that are running, it seems, on one particular host, on two different hosts. It also tells me not the whole service is impacted, it is just a single endpoint of this check destination service. I think it's called check destination. It gives me an overview and now actually explains to me why our AI detected this is the root cause. Because behind the scenes, what our AI is doing, it is analyzing, as I said earlier, response time, failure rates, HTTP status codes, exceptions, database messages. And it actually tells me, guess what? What we have seen is a deployment change where somebody made a deployment. Right after the deployment, the response time of this backend service went up like crazy, which actually impacted our 700x something users. Now the question is, what actually has changed, right? This is good to know. For developers now, in case this might be a coding issue, or also for the infrastructure people, it would be cool if I could just click on this particular button here. It's called response time analysis. So now our AI is actually crunching through all the data from infrastructure, through your Kubernetes, through your code, all the way up to the end users, and basically tries to figure out what actually made this system change and behave in a different way. It seems there's no problem with databases, so the database guys are off the hook. There's no problems with interacting with other services. It's all pure code execution. And I can go down all the way to the code level where Dynatrace tells me, you know what, I want to show you the hotspots. The hotspots is this particular method, including complete stack traces and distributed traces that show me who is actually calling this method and why, is this consuming, in this case, all the CPU. Right? And if I want to, I can even download the source code. So that means if it's a language like Java, .NET, PHP, Node.js, I can just download the source code right from here and can figure out what's wrong. Exciting? Yes or no? A little bit? Yeah, awesome, good. So I want to show you one more thing. Remember, we saw there was a deployment change. So now Dynatrace also tells me in this screen who actually made that deployment change. In this case, and actually let me zoom in a little more. In this case, we have integrated Dynatrace with the CI/CD tool. In this particular example, we were using ServiceNow for actually change approval. And it seems that, what's the name? Alice McBride, she approved a change. I have the link back to the CI system. That means I know who actually built this. I also have information about who owns this particular service. What's the name? Chuck Ryan. I got the Git commit, so I have all the information about who changed or who approved this particular change, including, and this is also very exciting, a remediation suggestion. So what we also allow you to do, and I think this is especially for those folks of you that are trying to make developers' lives easier by providing them new services where they can not only push code through, but also tell you what should be executed in case their code fails. So as part of that deployment, the developers, whoever writes your remediation runbooks, they can say, whoever analyzes this problem, here is what I want them to do. In this case, execute this Ansible Tower runbook. All right? This makes life much easier. Because I know the business impact, remember? I know the business impact. I know the technical root cause. I know who to call, but best I also know a remediation action that I can automatically execute. Make sense? All right. So how much time do we have left? About 10 minutes. All right. To your question in the back, how does this all work? The way this works is when I install Dynatrace, I guess the question is, how do you install Dynatrace? We deploy, or we offer Dynatrace in 2 deployment flavors, where we run our system either in the cloud on AWS, so you can leverage Dynatrace as a SaaS offering, or you can also install Dynatrace on your own hardware. Whether this is physical or virtual, we don't care. It's a managed offering. That means the data that is collected gets sent to your systems. In order to monitor, you need to install what we call a one agent. And this hopefully answers your question in the back. So what I have in my system, I have 262 different hosts that are monitored currently by Dynatrace. And what you see here is actually the dependency map that Dave was talking about. This is a dependency map, and if you focus on the left first, I call this the vertical dependency map. That means I installed and roll out the one agent on my physical machines, my virtual machines for Kubernetes, whatever flavor it is. We have an operator that's automatically rolling it out. We have support for Lambdas. So we cover pretty much everything underneath it, even the mainframe, because I know this is still out there. We have a lot of technologies we support. So on the left side, where we see the one agent automatically knows where is this machine running, what is running on it. We see every process, every container. Most importantly, we also see which applications and services are provided by these processes, and on very top, which applications are actually leveraging these services. So this is the whole vertical dependency map, and on the right, this is what I call the horizontal dependency map. I know that this machine is talking to all these other machines and is depending on it. Why? Because we automatically analyze all of your network connections. And we do this not only on the host level, we also do this on the process level. So if I click on the process, I know exactly how this process communicates with all the other processes around it, and I can go all the way up. Now, how does this work technically? Our one agent hooks into your OS, detects when a new process gets started. If this process is an application runtime like Java.NET, PHP, Node, we automatically hook into these interfaces that these runtimes provide for us to instrument code to get code level information. For web servers, whether it's Nginx, whether it's IIS, whether it's Apache, we automatically add a module which actually allows us, when an HTML page is responded back to your end users, to automatically inject a little JavaScript file on that page. And this actually makes it possible to monitor end users, because we inject a little JavaScript file on the fly without anybody having to do any code changes or configuration changes. That's the beauty of it. All automatic. That's one way of the automation, obviously, right? So horizontal and vertical dependency map. So when we detect the problem, just the problem that I had opened earlier, when we detect this problem, and let me go back to the one I had earlier, I believe I had, which one did I have open? Let's do 24 hours. I want to come up with the same number again so that we are following kind of the same. Here we go, I think this is the one. So what that means, what Dynatrace does is it detects there's an issue by analyzing a change in behavior of the end users, a change in behavior of your response times, of your failure rates, a change in behavior of your system as a whole, and then opens up a problem, and then it walks through the dependency tree. And what you see here now on the left, this is not all of your infrastructure, but just those components that support the one application that is currently experiencing a problem. And what is kind of replayed here is all the events that Dynatrace has observed throughout the problem period. I'll replay this again so that you can follow what is showing here. It basically shows where did the problem start, what additional evidence do we have, critical log messages we automatically extract, or there was a TCP/IP connection problem, or a slow database call, or a configuration or deployment change that was done by, I think her name was Alice McBride. So instead of, and you see this, I mean, this is monitoring, and this is including events from hosts, from processes, and also all the way up for applications. Instead of getting different messages from different tools that monitor different pieces of your stack, and maybe from one cloud provider, another cloud provider, you get a single message from Dynatrace with the business impact, so you can do business remediation, with the technical root cause, so you can do automated root cause detection and what we call self-healing. And you also better understand as an architect how your system is actually, let's say, very, very receptive to problems, right? Where did the problem start and how did it kind of explode? This is really cool. Agree? Yes, awesome. Perfect. So I do have about 5 more minutes. I want to show 2 more things. I want to go to my application, because one of the magic ingredients is not only that we do the dependency mapping from what I call vertical. As you can see here, this is the view of real user monitoring data. So we can see that this was my application. I can do either performance analysis. I can also do my behavioral analysis. So Dynatrace automatically detects what are your entry pages, what are your exit pages, where do people bounce off. You can define conversion goals and all that stuff. From a performance perspective, you get all of your JavaScript errors. You get your XHR errors. So we tell you all of that. What I really like, and I used to develop for a while until they said, well, it's better for you to go on stage and do technical demos and don't develop that much anymore. But what I get really excited about is this here, because this also shows one of the things that we as Dynatrace have been doing for 15 years. So I started with the company 12 years ago. Dynatrace was founded 15 years ago, and the core technology was automated distributed tracing. We call it PurePath. Now I know that the whole Silicon Valley these days is all crazy about distributed tracing. They talk about like it's just the latest invention. We've been doing this for 15 years. Distributed tracing without code change from, like in this case, on the left, my application easy travel across my different proxies, which in this case seems to be an Apache. And then I can see how these transactions are basically spanning through your infrastructure, showing how many transactions go to this microservice versus the other microservice, where failures come in, right? Where retries happen, where proxies are in the middle. If you're doing Kubernetes, if you're using things, service meshes, we actually see all of your service meshes in the middle, all your proxies, your envoys. It's all there. It helps you to better understand, and actually this is really it is a simple application, I thought, but it's a very long. Dave, you may want to come up with who has the longest service flow, right? It's also a cool thing. So this is automatically there, zero code change, right? And you get this data. All right, last thing I want to show you, because I promised you to show you some code. I have a second environment, and I'm not proud of this, to be quite honest with you, but I told you that I don't get paid for being a developer anymore. So what I've done, I have created a very simple app. What you see here is my app. On the left is deployed in staging, on the right in production. The whole thing runs on Kubernetes, in this case EKS. And I'm a developer. Let's put the developer hat on. And if I want to deploy version number 4, because this is build number 3, as you can see here, and if I'm a developer, I'm coding, what I want to have a self-service experience as a developer to push code safely out in production. So I want to show you how this works if you integrate Dynatrace in your CI/CD process, and also including, obviously, with your operations, with your auto-remediation. As a developer, the only thing I need to do is, and I'm using Captain. Captain is an open source project that Dynatrace is driving. It's a control plane for cloud-native continuous delivery and automated operations. So the only thing I need to do is I need to say, Captain, please deploy version number 4 of my application. I promise, well, I can give you a heads up, the background colors here won't get too much nicer. My boss always gives me shit about my choice of colors. So we'll see a different background color in a second. But what happens now, I basically kick off my continuous delivery pipeline. So I basically say deploy build number 4. The way Captain works, I have, this is my whole pipeline code. There's no lengthy Jenkins pipelines anymore. We kind of figured out a way that it's time for a new delivery model. So I only say I have the first is a staging environment where I want to have direct deployment and I want to run performance tests. And once this is all good and my SLOs are met, so here I have a file where I can specify my SLOs, so I can specify metrics, and I can specify criteria of what is my expected response time, my expected number of database calls, so I can specify this. And if everything is good, it will be deployed in prod using a blue-green deployment strategy. Then it's doing another performance test, and if everything works, it's promoting it, otherwise it's automatically rolling it back. So what I've just done, I have deployed build number 4. What I should see, I have also my Slack turned on. So I actually see at 2:27 in the morning. This is Austrian time, because that's where I typically am. This is a minute ago. I asked Captain to please deploy the version. Captain internally makes a configuration change on Git, because everything I change will be obviously version controlled. So all my YAML files in the backend will be changed and version controlled. Then we're kicking off the deployment. which means the deployment has just finished. And as you can see now, version 4 is now in staging. Now Captain will automatically execute my tests. And at the end, it will evaluate my SLOs. And then depending on whether I'm good or no good, it will either promote it or just stop it, and so on and so forth. Now, what I also have as a developer, in my case, Dynatrace is monitoring my Kubernetes cluster. It's a single deployment of an operator to make this happen. And what I like about the integration now, you talked about Davis, right? Our AI. So our AI does a lot of magic things. What it also does, it provides a virtual assistant. Whether I can use Alexa with an Alexa integration, you have Slack integrations as a chatbot. This is our own little bot here. So I can actually say, what was my last deployment? And then hopefully it comes back with, you had a simple node version 4 was deployed with a direct deployment strategy. So I get a little information about who deployed it and so on and so forth. I can then also ask, what is the response time of service, what is it, simple node dot staging dot canary, right? And here we go, I automatically get my metrics without even having to think about that Dynatrace is in the backend. I see everything, and if I want to know more, I can click on the link here, and then it gets me to the details. Now I get into Dynatrace, and it actually shows me, hey, this is your service. It's a simple node. Here are all of your endpoints that are kind of hot right now. There's like some hotspots that it detected. What I also see are all the events. So on the bottom right here, you can see chronologically from the bottom up. Just before we started the talk, I deployed version number 3. Then the tests were starting. The tests finished about a couple of minutes later. And then the artifact was promoted into the next stage. Why? Because I met my quality gates. And the last thing I want to show you, what we also do, if you do it right with continuous delivery, every time you have a new code change and you kick off your pipeline, you want to kind of trace also the life cycle and every single step this artifact goes through. So I can actually copy this Captain context here, and I can go in here. This is my kind of deployment tracing tool. So now I can actually click on this, and I can see a full history of, this was at 1:17, so just before we started. I basically made a deployment change to say I want to deploy version number 3. This was before we got started. Then I see the full evidence, deployment finished, tests were finished. Then it evaluated my SLOs. I can see my individual metrics here, response time, throughput, error rate. I can see that those metrics where I had an SLA on it were actually passing because they were fast enough. And then it went on and pushed it into production. All right? So what I wanted you to kind of take home with you is that we may call it AI, but I think what we should really call it, it's a deterministic AI. It's based on data that is very rich in its granularity and rich in context. Context means all this dependency. And if we detect a problem by analyzing all of your metrics, we baseline and we detect there's an issue, we then walk through the dependency tree as you would do as a human. But instead of you needing minutes or hours or days to go through all the different tools, we do it in milliseconds. And with this information, we can then trigger the next automation thing, like sending notifications out, executing a remediation script. And you also saw, if you really do this right, you can also integrate this with your CI/CD to build better developer experiences. Because in the end, these are the guys that are building the latest features, and if you are on the ops side, you want to build all this smartness into your platforms so that they can release better software faster in the end. All right? So if there are more questions, I think we'll handle this later because I want to give you a little more time to actually finish and kind of get the customer point of this.
Thanks, Andy. So thanks very much, Andy. And so now I'd like to introduce Sanjay Sankali from Western Union, who will be also taking some questions from you guys if you feel you would like to offer up some questions, and we'll integrate this last period of time. So Sanjay, why don't you introduce yourself, what it is that you do, Western Union's journey, and things like that.
Sounds good. My name is Sanjay Sankoli. I head the Cloud Center of Excellence at Western Union. Just to give you a little bit of background on what Western Union does. So we are in cross-border, cross-currency money transfer business, and we do allow money transfers across 200 different countries, if you will, more than 200 actually, and we allow denominations, more than 120 different kinds of denominations to be exchanged, right? So essentially, this is an extremely complex world for us, right? I mean, if you really look at the amount of complexity and regulations and compliance across all these 200 countries and 126 different kinds of currencies, the systems are extremely complex. Yeah? So that's our primary agenda.
I understand this morning as part of a keynote, Andrew mentioned something and there was an example from Western Union. Why don't you share a little bit about what that
so
was
essentially what we have started our journey, if you will, on transforming our platforms and migrating all of these things to AWS. Yeah. So essentially what does that do, right? Why are we doing that? Predominantly for 3 reasons. Yeah. We want to ensure we are a predominant player in this digital marketplace. Yeah. So essentially what does that mean? That means we really want to have a frictionless customer experience. That's one of the primary objectives. And ensuring that we provide consistent customer experiences across all the channels where we allow money transfers. Yeah? Be it web-based channels, mobile, or traditional retail point of sales terminals. So, and then essentially, at the same time, we really want to provide very consistent experience, right? Very reliable experience to our development community. That's pretty much what Andi just demonstrated, yeah? So these are the primary objectives where we are headed. And if you look at our cloud strategy, it's hinged on 3 different pillars, if you will, right? 1, drive a level of efficiency in existing products and services because the marketplace is changing. Obviously, there's significant expectations from our business, if you will. 2nd, allow or accelerate innovation, if you will. Allow our development community to provide new products and services and push them to the market a lot faster, right? 3rd is allow our organization to participate in an open market economy, right? The whole idea of APIfication and all of that, right? So this actually brings an entirely different set of challenges for us.
So it was interesting because the marketer in me now can't help but say, like, why are you using Dynatrace? But when Andi was doing that demo, I heard you go, yep.
Yeah, that resonates, yeah.
I like this, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. How would you sum up, like, why Dynatrace and like what part of what Andi was sharing or your own experience do you see the most value?
Right. So, I mean, obviously, the idea of providing better customer experience is to understand how your systems work. I mean, things do go wrong, right? It's not that these things work flawlessly all the time. Things definitely go wrong, yeah? And when they do, what can you do to quickly detect that particular issue and provide a quick resolution to that, right? So that you can actually at least keep that customer experience consistent, right? So essentially, this whole idea of full stack visibility that you just mentioned, Andi, that was very, very critical for us, yeah? I mean, everyone starts that way with Dynatrace anyway, right? But then the AI and automation is a key piece for us. It's a very, very important piece of what we do, right? Particularly when you move services to cloud. Now your infrastructure is no longer as rigid as it used to be, right? It's extremely flexible, extremely agile. So you can actually do things now in cloud that traditionally you couldn't do on-prem, right? At least in our case, that was true. So essentially that means, let's say if you do detect an anomaly, you did show a few anomalies there, the simplest thing you could do is anyway, the AI ops does spit out a root cause, if you will. And then based around that root cause, if you can enrich that information and present that information to the support staff, their ability to act on that quickly and accurately, if you will, goes up significantly. And then as you mature and you kind of rely on those root cause that comes out, now you can start auto-remediating. So that was extremely critical for us. But here, everything you saw, we spent so much time on operational staff. But one of the things I just mentioned was this whole idea of frictionless customer experience. What does that really mean? Yeah? So there is a significant value to gain even if you're a product manager in this space, right? If you look at, because you do end user monitoring, you actually get the entire traceability. Now you can actually not only track failures, but you can track successes. How many transactions went through quickly, how many transactions were abandoned, if you will, and how many transactions resulted in experience that generally would result in customers drifting away from you, right? That information is also extremely critical. We can actually get a lot of that insight from this system as well. Feed that into your product managers. What happens now is now you come up with new features where you can actually provide an enhanced and a better customer experience. So this is part of our entire continuous improvement initiatives, right? And the other thing that really resonates to me is this is not magic, right? There has to be an intentionality, right? So it's extremely critical as part of your delivery process, the CI/CD thing that we talked about. You need to have some level of reliability functions built into it. Understand where things can fail. If you have a history, if you will, right? It's easy, you already have a history of what can go wrong. Otherwise, you're able to predict them. And then as you're actually going through this continuous delivery, constantly updating your software and pushing it out to production, if you will, you learn a lot from that. And over a period of time, you will continue to rely on the insights you do get out of Dynatrace, right? So those are some of the messages when Andi was showing resonated with us, something that we are on that journey, if you will.
Yeah, and before I ask you guys to open up for questions, please, because you can in 2 seconds. But I was actually taken a little bit by, we talked about the need to evolve and the need to change and the need to constantly learn. Like you're not going to just purchase a new tool and all of a sudden you're going to become an expert and your whole organization changes as a result. That's what sort of struck me with your story. What's your learning path and what are you going to do next, or what do you want to do next?
Yeah, so the whole idea of auto-remediation, self-healing is very aspirational for us. Right? So when we look at a lot of this data that we collect, we're not purely looking at it from something going wrong and how do you detect that and how do you fix that. We're also looking at things that we could do better, right? Essentially identify friction points in that entire journey, if you will. One of the big advantages, the dependencies that you were just showing about. Right? So if you really look at the dependencies, I mean, that's going to stay. This is never going to be simplified, right? And particularly when you participate in this economy where you are part of a connected world, right? Anything can go wrong. So what can you do to understand, even in case we have executed a transaction very successfully, identify the friction points where we can constantly do better, right? So our idea is to see, I mean, this is very aspirational for us, really. We are actually trying to understand the friction points within the system, if you will, and how can we adjust these deployments in real time? How can we auto-remediate some of those? How do we adjust some of our application configurations, right? So that we can constantly keep the customer experience consistent, if you will, right? Or maybe do better, right? So that's pretty much where we want to head with it. These are extremely aspirational goals, but something I think is very doable and rich.
And the session replay part was something that I heard you probably give the biggest oh yeah, this is awesome. Is that something that's valuable to you as well?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly, although they're aspirational, they're very real, right? It's just a matter of time we'll get there.
So do you guys are there any questions for not just for Sanjay, but also for Andi or for anyone? Conscious that it's only a few minutes until you get to get your drinks and your beers. But just wondering if there's any other questions out there. Yeah.
I do understand that from the infrastructure logs and from the database logs, everything can be done and we can get all those kind of cluster and everything. But what about cost product? For example, Informatica, loads that happens if something goes wrong there. Or maybe some reporting server is happening which is inside the application, like cost product, not from the server perspective.
Yep.
Is it possible to get the logs analyzed and get some information there as well?
Yes, so if I understood the question correctly, can we get information from within the app when the app is causing? We do automatic code level, we give you code level visibility because we automatically do code instrumentation on the fly. That means we see when exceptions are thrown, when log messages are written in the context of a distributed trace. So we tell you, like in my case, this user Heiner from Germany, he clicked on the button and we then tell you which log message was written, which exception was thrown, which database statement took longer and maybe it didn't return the values that he was expecting. This happens fully automatically. Now, if you have any systems where for whatever reason you may, cannot install them on agent, then we give you APIs to feed this data into Dynatrace. Like I showed you the integration with my CI/CD tool. That means just feeding events or feeding metrics, you can do all of this. The more data you get into Dynatrace, the better the Davis AI becomes, yeah.
The data is stored on the Dynatrace cloud or is it still on my own system?
It's stored in Dynatrace, and you can either decide to leverage Dynatrace as a SaaS offering, or you can install Dynatrace managed on your own environment. Yeah.
Any other questions at all? No? Maybe lastly, to sum up, Sanjay, thanks for your time. One of the things that you talked about was autonomous cloud.
Right.
Is that something that is a vision for you, and where are you heading with that?
No, that's the aspirational part of what we do, right? I mean, particularly we cannot predict, if you will, the volume of money transfers, when they occur, where they occur. Some of these money transfers are extremely seasonal, if you will, right? So over a period of time, we want to learn, and over a period of time, we want to adjust our deployments real time without any human intervention, so we can keep that experience consistent, right? These are aspirational goals that we are marching towards, but it's real. I mean, it can be really done. It's just that it's a matter of time when we get there.
Perfect. I mean, I like your analogy there about how you're automating as much as you can so you guys can focus more on experience, which is really critical. Hey guys, thanks so much for your time and for listening to us. We have a booth out there with all the other thousands of software providers. You'll probably find us somewhere out there. There's something to do with software. And we also have a booth over at the Aria, I think.
Aria and Venetian.
Aria and Venetian. So we've got a free trial on our website, and we really appreciate your time. And if you want to have another chat personally with Sanjay or Andi, because you probably want to talk to them instead of me, you are more than welcome to. So thanks very much for listening and sticking it out. We appreciate it.
Thank you.